Encouraging word today comes out of the book of Luke, chapter 5, where Christ cleanses the leper, here in 12 through 16. Our text verse is going to be verse 14. But let's just go through here. I think this particular passage of Scripture can be very helpful in a number of ways to seeing the character of God and how God interacts with us and how we can do our best to serve the Lord and abide by what He wants us to do. And if we're doing that, we're going to be blessed for it. That's for sure. So here in Luke 5:12, I'll start 12, Christ cleanses the leper. And it came to pass when he was in a certain city, he being Jesus, beheld a man full of leprosy, who seeing Jesus fell on his face, a reverence to God, and besought him, saying, Lord, if thou wilt, thou canst make me clean. And he put forth his hand and touched him, this is Jesus, saying, I will, be thou clean. And immediately the leprosy departed from him. And he charged him, this is Jesus again, to tell no man, but go and show thyself to the priest, and offer for thy cleansing according as Moses commanded, for a testimony unto them. But so much the more went there a fame abroad of him, and great multitudes came together to hear and to be healed by him of their infirmities. And he withdrew himself into the wilderness and prayed. Okay, so there's a lot happening here, and I got hung up on verse 14, and that's what I wanted to share here. So I'm going to run through it pretty quickly, but hopefully this is a help here. First point I've got, belief and humility is what faith is all about. So here in the first part of this, when Christ cleanses the leper, you don't see the leper saying, hey, Jesus, maybe you could heal me. Could we try? Or, you know what? I've tried some stuff, but let me try you and just see how this goes. No, he was full of faith. And so you see that he fell on his face and he besought him, saying, Lord, if thou will, thou canst make me clean. He's saying, Jesus, I know that if you want to, you can make me clean. So the first point is, are we approaching the Lord, asking God to do something in our lives with the full belief and confidence that God can? If not, why? The whole idea behind faith is this belief that God is able and this humility that we are not on our own able, right? So he must increase and I must decrease. The same concept, right? That Jesus is in control. Jesus is full of miracles. Jesus is God. Here's Jesus. He can heal me, but will I humbly submit to him, right? That's the first point. The next one is real interesting here. So Jesus has a command to this individual after he heals him, and that's where things go a little awry. So here in 14, this is Jesus, and he charged him to tell no man, but go and show thyself to the priest, and offer for thy cleansing according as Moses commanded, for a testimony unto them. So when I read that, I was like, why wouldn't Jesus want everyone to know what he had just done? And I did some research, read some correspondence on this, and it was interesting to find out that in Leviticus, in the Old Testament, there's all of these laws and rituals you have to go through in order to be cleansed, like get a clean bill of health. It's kind of like the idea that if you had some contagious disease and you were quarantined, you'd have to go through all these procedures to get a clean bill of health and like reintegrate into society. It was the same way back then. And so what Jesus is saying is, don't tell people that I healed you. Just go to the priest, go through the process. And so what Jesus had in mind here was the best for this individual. But the individual couldn't help it, because here we see in the next verse, but so much the more went there a fame abroad, and a great multitude came together to hear and to be healed by him of their infirmities. Well, what did that do to Jesus? And he, Jesus, withdrew himself into the wilderness and prayed. So this man's actions of not directly listening to the Lord led to a lot of attention. It led to a lot of focus on this healing effort that Jesus was providing, and it distracted from the greater mission of showing who God is. So when we listen to God's commands, we're taken care of, and they're for the best. They're for us, right? But when we go our own way, or we can't help ourselves, or we get caught in emotion, bad things can happen. And they have consequences, not just on us, but on the ministry in general, which I think is very profound. So like if you don't come to church, or if you don't go to some soul winning event, or you don't do something, well, then maybe you just had an impact on the ministry in a negative way. Not only did you affect yourself negatively, how God was going to take care of you and bless you, but you actually affected the ministry too. So I think that's very powerful. Third here are the consequences, which I talked about, going against the call of God. And then finally, fourth, this is really cool. So in my King James Bible, in Luke 5, right below this passage of scripture, right when you get to literally the very next verse, it's how Jesus heals the paralyzed man. And that's that story of how they couldn't get in to the house where Jesus was at because it was so full, and this man was paralyzed. And, his friends literally had to take him on a bed up to the roof and drop him through the ceiling to get him to see Jesus, and he's healed. What's significant about this is it shows in line with scripture that Jesus is faithful and just to forgive and to heal, even when we mess up. So what's awesome about this is we see how this individual essentially drives the Lord out to the wilderness to pray because he was so swarmed by people. But then here's the Lord right next verse, getting right back after it, healing people and teaching and helping us understand the way we should go. So when we do make mistakes, we need to understand that if we turn to the Lord, he's still in the healing business. He's still on the throne. His purpose is forever. And so while we may mess up, and certainly we will, if you're like me, then you will, you always can turn back to the Lord. And when you do, it's amazing how he can heal you. So, it's just a little bit of a lot kind of packed into a little message here, but I hope it's a help and bless a man. And I hope you get something from it, and you just see the power of God in having faith, in listening to the Lord, and understanding when we disobey what can happen, and then knowing that God keeps his promises, that God keeps healing, and that we can all pray to him, turn to him in every situation for the best outcome. All right, man. I'll send you another one tomorrow. See you.